The market was alive with noise and chaos. Merchants shouted prices in loud voices, trying to draw attention to their stalls. Strange smells filled the air. Spices, oils, fried meat, and rotting leftovers mixed together until the entire place seemed to choke with heat. In the middle of it all, between the feet of tall aliens and heavy boots stomping the dirt ground, a small figure moved quietly. She was not walking like the others. She crawled on hands and knees, her ribs showing under her thin gray skin, her eyes sharp but tired. A little alien girl was searching the ground like a stray dog, picking up scraps that had fallen from the stalls. Her clothes were nothing more than torn fabric, tied around her body to cover what it could. She had no shoes, only dirty feet cut with sharp stones. When a merchant dropped a piece of fruit, she jumped forward, grabbed it, and bit into it before anyone else could. But even then, a heavy hand slapped the fruit out of her grasp. "Get away, dog girl," the merchant shouted with laughter, kicking dust in her face. The girl backed away, clutching her empty stomach. She did not cry, because she was used to it. Instead, she looked around for another chance. Children passed by, pointing at her and laughing. One of them threw a hard shell at her head, and another shouted, "She eats dirt like an animal! Crawl, crawl, little dog!" The girl lowered her head, shame burning her cheeks, but hunger forced her to keep searching. She found a bone on the ground, gnawed clean by someone else, but she still picked it up and licked it as if there was taste left. Every move she made looked desperate, but inside her eyes there was still something. Something proud, something that refused to break, though no one around could see it. In the crowd, one pair of eyes did see. A human stood by a merchant stall, tall and quiet, his hands carrying a bag of supplies. His name was Daniel, a trader who had been moving through this alien world for months. He had seen many things, but the sight of the small girl stopped him cold. Her face was dirty, but beneath the dirt he could see the shape of high cheeks, the line of her jaw, and the way she held herself even while crawling. It was not the face of a beast or a beggar. It was the face of someone important who had fallen into misery. He watched her push forward again, reaching for a piece of bread dropped in the dirt. Another boot came down and crushed it before she could grab it. The alien man above laughed and told her to lick the ground if she wanted it. The girl froze, trembling, but she did not cry. Daniel's hand tightened on his bag. Something in him refused to just watch. He stepped forward as the laughter continued. The girl bent low, stretching her arm for the bread covered in dust. Daniel's hand reached out faster, picking it up before she could. For a moment, her wide eyes met his. She expected him to throw it away or mock her like the others. Instead, he brushed the dirt off with his sleeve and placed it gently into her hands. The crowd around them grew silent, then erupted in mocking laughter. "Look at that! The human is feeding the dog girl," one alien shouted. "He must think she's his pet," another sneered. "Careful, human. She'll bite you next." Daniel ignored them all. He crouched so he was at the same level as her, looking straight into her eyes. The girl held the bread tightly, unsure if it was a trick. She had never seen kindness given without a price. "You're no dog," Daniel whispered, his voice calm but firm. "You're a princess, aren't you?" The words made her blink. For a second, her lips trembled as if she might speak, but no sound came. She had never been called that before. She had been called dog, rat, trash, but never princess. The crowd around them laughed louder, thinking Daniel was mocking her, but the girl could see in his eyes that he meant it. His gaze was steady, not cruel, not joking. He believed what he said. The girl's small fingers tightened around the bread, and she lowered her head as if ashamed to accept it, but hunger overcame her fear. She took a bite, chewing slowly, her eyes never leaving his. She expected him to walk away, but he stayed, standing tall between her and the crowd of aliens now jeering louder. Some merchants shouted that he should leave her alone, that she was nothing, that she was not worth the trouble. A guard even began walking toward them, shaking his head in annoyance. The girl looked up at Daniel with silent warning in her eyes. She had seen this before. Anyone who touched her or showed her kindness was mocked, sometimes even beaten. But Daniel did not move away. His jaw was set, his hand rested on the strap of his bag, and his presence was steady, like a wall between her and the cruelty of the world. The crowd could not understand why a human would do such a thing. To them, she was worthless, but to him, She was something else. He had seen in her a spark that no hunger or insult could erase. The little girl swallowed the bread and wiped her mouth with the back of her dirty hand. For the first time in a long time, she felt more than shame. She felt seen, and the words he had spoken, "You're a princess, aren't you?" echoed in her head, warm and impossible. The guard reached them, his voice sharp as he ordered Daniel to step aside. The crowd leaned in, waiting to see if the human would surrender the child like everyone else did. But Daniel did not move. He only straightened his back and stood taller, his hands still resting protectively near the girl. The girl clutched what was left of her bread, her heart pounding. For the first time, she did not feel alone in the market. For the first time, someone had looked at her and seen more than a starving creature crawling in the dirt. Someone had called her a princess, and that word lit a fire inside her that hunger had never been able to kill. The laughter around them grew louder as Daniel stayed beside the little girl. The aliens could not believe their eyes. A human was defending a starving child, one they had all agreed was nothing but dirt under their feet. Some pointed at him, others shouted insults, but Daniel did not flinch. His hand rested on the girl's thin shoulder, steady and calm, like he was shielding her from the world. The girl trembled under his touch, her eyes wide with fear. She whispered to him softly, almost too quiet for anyone else to hear, "You should leave me. I only bring trouble." Before Daniel could answer, two guards pushed through the crowd. They were tall, armored, and carried long staffs crackling with energy. The crowd moved aside quickly. Everyone knew the guards had the right to deal with street trash however they wanted. One of them pointed at the girl with disgust. "Human, step aside. She is no one. She belongs to no one. Let us handle her." The little girl froze, clutching the bread Daniel had given her. She had seen these guards before. Every time they came near, she ran, because if they caught her, they would drag her away and beat her for daring to beg. She whispered again, her voice shaking, "Please, don't fight them. Just let me go." Daniel looked down at her and then back at the guards. His voice was calm but firm. "She belongs to someone now. She's under my care." The crowd gasped. Some laughed nervously, thinking the human was insane. The guards' eyes narrowed, their alien faces twisting into anger. One stepped closer, slamming the butt of his staff against the ground. Sparks danced on the dirt. "Do not play games, human. This is a warning. Step away, or you will regret it." The girl tugged at Daniel's sleeve, desperate. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to pull away from him. She had lived long enough to know that no one ever won against the guards. Anyone who tried ended up bleeding on the ground. She shook her head, her small voice breaking, "Please, they will kill you. I am not worth this." But Daniel tightened his grip gently, refusing to let her go. His eyes burned with something she had never seen before, defiance. He turned his gaze back to the guards and raised his voice so the entire crowd could hear. "You call her nothing, but I see her for what she is. She is worth more than this entire market of fools who laugh at her." The market fell silent. The laughter died. Even the children who had been mocking her a moment ago stared with open mouths. No one had ever spoken like that about the little alien girl. The guards looked stunned for a heartbeat. Then their shock twisted into rage. One of them stepped forward, his staff raised high. "You dare insult us? You dare protect this trash?" His voice roared through the market, and the crowd backed away, leaving Daniel and the girl standing alone in the open space. The girl clung tighter to Daniel's arm, shaking so hard she could barely stand. Her eyes filled with tears, not because of hunger, but because someone was actually standing for her, and she knew the price he might pay. Her voice broke into a whisper again, desperate, pleading, "Please, please don't do this. You will die." Daniel's jaw tightened. He bent slightly so his face was level with hers. His voice dropped low, strong but kind. "You are worth fighting for. You are worth protecting. I will not let them touch you." The words made her chest ache. No one had ever said that to her. No one had ever believed she was worth anything more than scraps. She wanted to believe him, but fear made her body shake. The guards moved closer, weapons sparking. The crowd pressed back into the shadows, waiting to see blood. Everyone expected the human to kneel, to surrender, or to be beaten until he stopped breathing. The air grew tense, heavy, filled with the hum of the guards' weapons. Daniel straightened, his hand still resting protectively in front of the girl. His eyes never left the guards. His voice was steady, unshaken, even with the threat of death before him. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." Gasps spread through the crowd. Even the guards hesitated for a moment, shocked by his boldness. The girl looked up at him, tears rolling down her dirty cheeks. She could hardly understand why this human, a stranger, would risk his life for her. One guard snarled and took a step forward, swinging his staff. The girl screamed and clutched Daniel's side, bracing for pain. But Daniel did not back away. His body moved with speed and strength that no one expected. His hand shot up, catching the staff before it struck, sparks dancing against his palm. The crowd shouted in disbelief. The guard tried to pull the staff free, but Daniel held it like iron. His voice was low but filled with fury. "You will not touch her." He shoved the weapon back, forcing the guard to stumble. The other guard stepped forward, raising his staff high, ready to strike both of them down. The girl buried her face against Daniel's chest, her small hands clutching his shirt tightly. Her body shook, but for the first time, she felt something strange. Hope. The crowd watched with wide eyes, their mocking laughter gone, replaced by tension and curiosity. Whispers spread through the market. Some said the human was insane, others said he was a fool, but a few wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was something else. Something dangerous, something powerful. The guards raised their weapons again, sparks lighting the ground. Daniel stood tall, unshaken, with the small alien girl hidden safely behind him. His voice carried through the silence of the market. "She is not trash. She is not a dog. She is more than any of you can see, and I will not let anyone harm her." The girl lifted her face slowly, staring up at him with wide eyes. In that moment, she did not feel like a starving child crawling in the dirt. She felt like someone worth saving. She felt like a princess. The guards lunged forward and the crowd shouted, but Daniel did not move aside. He braced himself, ready to fight, ready to defy the entire market if he had to. And the girl's heart raced, torn between fear and the impossible thought that maybe, just maybe, this human would win. Daniel's grip tightened around the girl's hand as the guards charged. He pulled her close and ducked into the narrow space between two stalls. Sparks from the guards' weapons struck the ground where they had been standing only moments before. The crowd screamed and scattered, but Daniel did not look back. He ran, dragging the little girl with him, her bare feet stumbling against the rough stone path. Her breathing was ragged, but she kept moving, holding tightly to his hand as though it was the only thing keeping her alive. They raced through the twisting alleys of the alien city. The walls were tall and crooked, shadows stretching long as the sun began to dip. Strange smells of burning oil and stale food hung in the air. Behind them, the heavy steps of armored guards echoed closer and closer, shouts filling the night. The girl gasped between breaths. "They won't stop. They'll kill you for helping me." Daniel's voice was sharp but steady. "Then we'll make sure they don't catch us." His eyes scanned every turn, searching for a way to lose them. He pulled her into a side street, then another, weaving through the maze of the city like he had been running its alleys for years. Still, the sound of boots never faded. The girl's small body shook with exhaustion, but she did not complain. She had learned to survive in silence. But now, something was different. Someone was actually running with her, not chasing her. For the first time, she was not alone. They turned a corner and nearly slammed into a wall of armored patrols blocking the street. Daniel cursed under his breath and spun back, pulling the girl into a narrow passage so tight he had to turn sideways to fit. The stone scraped his arms as he forced his way through. The girl squeezed against him, her breath warm and quick. Behind them, the guards shouted orders, their weapons sparking as they tried to follow. Daniel pushed forward until the passage opened into an old tunnel, dark and damp. He led her down, their footsteps echoing against the dripping walls. The deeper they went, the quieter the world above became. Only their breathing and the distant sound of water filled the silence. Daniel slowed finally, letting the girl catch her breath. She leaned against the wall, her thin chest heaving. Her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, two small points of light that seemed too beautiful for the filth around them. Daniel knelt in front of her. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl hesitated, like the question was dangerous. Her lips trembled before she finally whispered, Solari. The name hung in the air, soft and strange, like it carried weight. Daniel repeated it quietly, as if promising never to forget. Solari. You don't have to crawl anymore, not while I'm here. Her eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head quickly, wiping them away. You don't understand. You can't help me. They'll never stop chasing me. Her voice cracked, and for the first time she looked less like a starving child and more like someone carrying a secret too heavy for her small body. Daniel frowned. Why? Who are they? Why do they hate you so much? Solari lowered her gaze, her hands gripping the torn fabric of her clothes. Finally, she whispered the truth. My mother was once a queen. They killed her because she wouldn't bow to them. They tried to kill me too. I ran. Ever since, they've hunted me. Her voice was small, but the words were sharp, slicing the silence of the tunnel. Daniel stared at her, stunned. He thought of the way she carried herself, even when crawling for scraps, the way she never cried out in front of others. It all made sense now. She wasn't just a child abandoned to the streets. She was the last of a royal line, a princess forced into the dirt. Solari looked at him, fear filling her glowing eyes. If they find me with you, they'll kill you too. I'm cursed. You should have left me in the market. Daniel reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. No, Solari. You're not cursed. You're alive, and that means you still matter. They'll have to go through me to touch you. For a moment, she simply stared at him, her lips parting as if she wanted to argue. But no words came. Her whole life, she had been told she was nothing. Now, a stranger spoke to her like she was worth everything. The tunnel rumbled faintly as heavy steps echoed from behind. A faint glow spread through the darkness. The guards had tracked them even here. Solari's eyes widened, panic flooding her face. They've found us. Daniel pulled her close again, scanning the tunnel. He spotted a broken doorway ahead, half covered by rusted metal. Without hesitation, he guided her through it, into a hollow chamber filled with dust and the bones of machines long forgotten. He pressed his back against the door, listening to the shouts growing louder. Solari clung to his arm, her small body shaking. Her voice trembled as she whispered, You should run. You can still escape. Leave me. Daniel shook his head firmly. I didn't run from them in the market. I won't run now. The sound of boots grew closer. A sharp beam of light swept across the tunnel outside, sliding over the broken doorway. Solari buried her face against Daniel's chest, her tears soaking his shirt. He held her tightly, his heartbeat steady, even as danger closed in. The guards' voices were louder now, only steps away. The hum of their weapons filled the air. Solari's entire body tensed, waiting for the moment they would break through and drag her away again. But Daniel's eyes burned with determination in the darkness. He whispered close to her ear, his voice calm, steady, and unshaken. They may have found us, but they don't know who they're dealing with. The beam of light froze on the doorway. Boots stopped outside. The air turned heavy, thick with silence. Solari's breath caught in her throat. Her small hand clutched Daniel's shirt tighter. The guards shouted, ordering the door to be broken down. Sparks flew as weapons cut into the rusted frame. Daniel pulled Solari behind him, ready to shield her with his own body if he had to. The first piece of metal cracked and fell away. More sparks lit the chamber. Solari whimpered softly, her royal secret pressing like a weight between them. Daniel stood tall, his shadow stretching long in the flickering light. The door gave way with a crash, and the searchlight burst into the chamber. Daniel stepped forward, shielding Solari completely, his fists clenched, his eyes sharp and ready. The hunt had reached them. But Daniel was not about to let the princess fall into their hands. The chamber was dark and heavy with dust, the broken machines inside standing like skeletons of a forgotten age. Daniel guided Solari deeper into the room, his hand steady on her shoulder. She moved slowly, her small body trembling from fear and exhaustion. The sound of the guards outside still echoed, but for the moment, they were safe in the shadows. Daniel lit a small lamp from his pack, the glow spreading across the cracked walls. Solari flinched at the light, her large eyes catching the glow like pools of silver. Daniel knelt in front of her. You need to eat more, he said, pulling out food from his bag. A piece of bread, dried meat, a small bottle of water. Solari hesitated, staring at the food as if it were a trick. Her hands shook when she reached for it, but she ate slowly, carefully, like someone afraid it might vanish at any moment. Daniel didn't rush her. He just watched, his heart tight at the sight of her small hands clutching every crumb as though it was treasure. When her hunger eased a little, Daniel noticed something strange. On her skin, faint lines glowed softly in the lamplight. At first, he thought it was just a reflection, but when he leaned closer, the patterns shifted, curling like silver fire under her flesh. They ran across her neck, down her arms, like markings carved by nature itself. Solari noticed his stare and pulled her ragged sleeve down quickly, her face turning pale. Daniel's voice was calm, but curious. "What are those marks?" She looked away, her lips trembling. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "They are the curse that follows me." Daniel shook his head. "No, that doesn't look like a curse. That looks like something powerful." Her eyes filled with tears, and she finally lifted her sleeve again, showing him the glow fully. The patterns were beautiful, curling like vines of light. It is not power. It is a sign, a royal birthmark. Every heir of the old throne was born with it. It proves who I am, and it is the reason they want me dead. The truth weighed in the silence between them. Daniel sat back slowly, his eyes fixed on her. The way she held herself, the pride that even starvation hadn't stolen, it all connected now. "You really are a princess," he whispered. Solari shook her head quickly, hugging her knees to her chest. "No, a princess would have guards and jewels. A princess would not crawl in the dirt for scraps. I am only a shadow. My mother was the last queen, but she was betrayed. They killed her in front of me. I escaped, but they never stopped hunting me. To them, I am a threat that must be erased." Her voice broke at the end, and she buried her face against her arms. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to say she was wrong, but he could see the pain in her trembling shoulders. She was more than just a starving girl. She was the last survivor of a royal bloodline. That explained the hatred, the cruelty, the endless hunts. The assassins outside weren't chasing a beggar. They were chasing a princess. Daniel leaned forward, his voice steady, his words carrying weight. "Solari, listen to me. I don't care what they call you. I don't care what they think you are. To me, you are not dirt. You are not cursed. You are worth more than all of them combined, and I will protect you." Her head lifted slowly. Her glowing eyes searched his face as though trying to find a lie, but his gaze never wavered. For the first time in years, she saw someone who didn't look at her with disgust or fear. She saw someone who believed in her. Before she could answer, a sharp noise came from outside. The scrape of boots, the murmur of alien voices, the sound of metal being dragged across stone. Solari's face went pale. She whispered in terror, "They've found us." Daniel stood quickly, his lamp casting long shadows across the chamber. He motioned for her to stay low as he moved toward the broken doorway. Peering through a crack, he saw shapes moving in the dark tunnel outside. Not just guards. Their armor was black, their helmets marked with crimson lines. These were not common soldiers. These were assassins, trained to kill silently, mercilessly. Solari's body shook violently. She pressed her hands to her glowing skin as if trying to hide the marks. "They know," she whispered. "They know I am still alive. They won't stop until I am gone." Daniel turned to her, his voice strong but quiet. "Then we'll make them stop." Her eyes widened. "You don't understand. They are not like the guards. They don't fail. They kill. Anyone who stands in their way dies." Daniel's jaw tightened. He pulled a metal bar from the broken machine beside him, gripping it like a weapon. "Then they've never met me." Solari gasped softly. She had expected him to leave her the moment he knew the truth. Instead, he was preparing to fight against assassins for her sake. Tears blurred her vision, but she forced them away. She didn't want to look weak before him. Outside, the assassins spread out, their red markings glowing faintly in the dark. They moved silently, like shadows, their weapons sharp and gleaming. One of them whispered in a language Solari knew too well. "Find the girl, kill the human." Her heart froze. Daniel stood tall in front of her, his broad shoulders blocking her from view. He whispered back to her without turning his head, his voice calm like unshakable stone. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, stay behind me." Solari clutched the ragged edge of his coat, her small fingers digging into the fabric. For the first time in her life, she felt something she had never known: safety. Even with assassins outside, even with death steps away, she felt safer behind this one human than she'd ever felt hiding alone in the shadows. The first assassin's blade scraped against the doorway. The air grew heavy with the scent of steel and blood. Daniel raised the metal bar higher, his muscles tight, his eyes burning with defiance. Solari's breath caught as the assassins prepared to strike. The silence broke with the sharp clang of steel against stone. Sparks lit the chamber. Solari gasped and held tighter to Daniel's coat, her heart hammering. The assassins had arrived, and Daniel stood unshaken, ready to face them all. The air inside the broken chamber grew colder as the assassins stepped in. Their black armor glinted faintly under the weak lamplight, their faces hidden behind sharp helmets marked with crimson streaks. They moved like shadows, silent and precise, their curved blades humming with energy. Solari's small body pressed against the wall, her glowing birthmarks flickering faintly like they were responding to danger. She could barely breathe. Every sound, every footstep felt like it would be her last. Daniel stood in front of her, gripping the metal bar in both hands. His eyes never left the assassins. His chest rose and fell slowly, calm even in the face of death. The first assassin tilted his head, his voice cutting through the silence, cold and sharp. "Step aside, human. You have no place in this matter. Give us the girl, and you may leave alive." Daniel's voice was steady, unshaken. "No. If you want her, you'll have to take her over my dead body." The assassins exchanged glances, and then a hiss of laughter slipped from one of them. "So be it." The first one lunged. His blade sliced through the air, aiming for Daniel's chest. Daniel stepped aside, swinging the bar hard. The clang of metal rang out as the bar struck against the assassin's arm, sending sparks flying. The assassin stumbled but didn't fall. Another blade came from the side. Daniel ducked low, then grabbing a broken piece of pipe from the ground and shoving it upward, catching the second assassin off balance. Solari gasped, her small hands covering her mouth. She had never seen anyone fight for her before. Every time, she had been the one running, hiding, crawling away. But this man, this human, stood tall against killers who had ended warriors stronger than him. The assassins regrouped, circling him like wolves. Their steps were slow and measured, waiting for an opening. Daniel stood like a wall, his arms tense, sweat starting to form at his brow. One assassin feinted left, another right, trying to confuse him. The third rushed in from behind. Solari screamed, "Behind you!" Daniel spun just in time, raising the bar. The assassin's blade scraped against it, sparks lighting the chamber. The impact shook his arms, but he did not let go. With a grunt, he shoved the assassin back, swinging the bar in a wide arc that forced the others to step away. The assassins hissed in frustration. They were trained killers, but this human refused to fall. Daniel's chest rose and fell faster now, but his eyes burned with the same fire as before. He was not fighting for glory. He was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for the small girl trembling behind him. Solari's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her glowing hands against her chest, whispering to herself, "Why? Why would he fight for me?" The assassins adjusted their stance. They stopped playing games. Their blades hummed louder, charged with energy that could cut through steel. They rushed him together, 3 black shadows moving as one. Daniel braced himself. He blocked the first strike, ducked the second, but the third blade slashed across his arm. He staggered back, blood dripping from the wound. Solari cried out in horror, her body shaking violently. But Daniel didn't stop. He gritted his teeth, tightened his grip, and pushed forward with renewed strength. His bar slammed into one assassin's helmet, cracking it. The man fell back, dazed. Daniel turned quickly, smashing his elbow into the chest of the second assassin. The third came from the side, blade flashing. Daniel twisted, the edge grazing his ribs, but he struck upward, knocking the assassin back. Every move left him more tired, more wounded, but he refused to fall. Solari's glowing eyes followed every strike, every drop of blood, her heart pounding so loud it drowned the noise of the fight. She wanted to run to him, to shield him, but her small body was frozen in fear. The assassins pulled back for a moment, regrouping at the doorway. Their leader spoke again, his voice colder now. "You cannot protect her forever. She is a curse. Even if you survive tonight, you will not survive tomorrow. Give her to us and end this suffering." Daniel spat blood from his mouth and raised the bar again. His voice was iron. "She is no curse. She is a child. She is a princess, and I would rather die than hand her to cowards like you." The words echoed through the chamber, shaking Solari to her core. She pressed her hands harder to her chest, her glowing marks burning brighter as tears streamed down her face. No one had ever spoken like that for her. No one had ever stood between her and death without wanting something in return. The assassins hissed in anger and charged again. Daniel roared, meeting them head on. The sound of steel, sparks, and crashing metal filled the air. Solari covered her ears, tears falling, but then something happened. Her skin began to burn, not with pain, but with light. The patterns across her body flared to life, shining like molten silver. The assassins froze mid-attack, their eyes widening inside their helmets. The glow spread across the chamber, blinding and fierce. Solari fell to her knees, patting her small body trembling as the light poured from her, filling the dark room with brilliance. Daniel turned, shocked, shielding his eyes as the glow spread outward like a wave. The assassins staggered back, covering their faces. Their weapons clattered to the floor as the light grew too strong. They hissed in fear, their shadows twisting against the walls. Solari screamed, her voice echoing like thunder, and the light burst outward in a flash that shook the very walls of the chamber. When the glow faded, the assassins were gone, fled into the tunnels, leaving their weapons scattered. Solari collapsed on the ground, weak and trembling, the glow fading from her skin. Daniel dropped the bar and rushed to her, kneeling at her side. He lifted her gently into his arms. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. She whispered, her voice barely a breath, "I didn't mean to. It just happened." Daniel held her close, his heart pounding. "You saved us, Solari. That power is not a curse. It's your gift. And no matter who comes, I'll make sure you live to use it." She looked at him with wide, tired eyes. For the first time in her memory, she felt safe, not because she was hiding, but because someone stood with her. Her lips trembled into the faintest smile. No one ever called me a princess before you." Daniel brushed the dirt from her hair, his voice steady even as his arm bled. "Then let me be the first of many, because that's what you are." Outside the chamber, faint echoes of boots still moved through the tunnels. More danger was coming. But in that moment, Solari clung to him, feeling hope for the first time in her life. And Daniel, battered and bleeding, held her tighter, ready to face whatever came next. Solari lay weak in Daniel's arms, her chest rising and falling slowly as the glow on her skin dimmed. The chamber smelled of smoke and dust, the air heavy after the burst of light that had driven the assassins away. Daniel lowered her gently onto a broken cloth spread across the floor. He looked at her pale face, her glowing marks fading into faint silver lines, and he knew this power inside her was not ordinary. It was something ancient, something feared. He pressed his hand against her forehead, and she opened her eyes slowly, still trembling. "They'll come back," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "They'll bring more. I cannot control it. Each time it happens, it drains me. I'm useless to you." Daniel shook his head firmly. "You are not useless. That power saved us. It isn't a curse, Solari. It's proof of who you are. Proof they fear you." Her lips trembled as if she wanted to believe him, but her eyes were full of doubt. All her life, people had told her she was nothing, just a burden. To think of herself as more than that felt impossible. She turned her face away, tears shining at the edges of her eyes. "They don't fear me. They fear what I might become. That's why they hunt me. They won't stop until I am gone." Daniel leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "Then they'll have to go through me first. I swore I would protect you, and I meant it." For a long time, she said nothing. Then, with a small shake of her head, she whispered, "You don't understand, Daniel. My bloodline, it carries power that once ruled this world. That's why they killed my mother. They feared her. They fear me. If I live long enough to grow into my power, I will be a threat to all of them. That's why they want me dead." Her hands trembled as she touched the glowing marks on her arm. Daniel studied the lines carefully, his brow furrowed. They pulsed faintly, like living veins of light under her skin. He could feel heat radiating from them, soft but steady. He understood now. This girl wasn't just some lost child. She was the last heir of a throne, carrying power that could shake empires. And she was only a child, hunted, starving, alone. He took her hand in his voice rough but full of certainty. "Solari, I don't care if you are a threat to them. To me, you are not a weapon. You're a child who deserves to live. You deserve to eat, to sleep without fear, to laugh again. And I will see that happen." Her eyes lifted to his slowly. There was a shine in them that had not been there before, a faint hope she was afraid to embrace. Why? Why would you risk everything for me? I am nothing to you. Daniel's jaw tightened, and he answered without hesitation. Because when I saw you in that market, crawling in the dirt, I saw more than they did. They saw a beggar. I saw a princess. And once I saw that truth, I could never walk away. Her heart beat faster at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She wanted to argue, but her voice caught in her throat. Instead, she stayed quiet, her small fingers curling tighter around his hand. The silence didn't last long. A sound echoed from deeper in the tunnels, the sharp metallic click of boots against stone. Daniel's head shot up, his muscles tensed, his body instantly alert. Solari's breath quickened. They're back, she whispered in fear. Daniel stood, gripping the broken metal bar again. His arm was still bleeding, but his stance was steady, ready for whatever came. He motioned for Solari to stay low behind him. They can keep coming. I'll fight them all if I have to. Solari watched him, her chest aching with both fear and awe. She had never seen anyone face danger without hesitation like he did. She wanted to be brave like him, but her body felt weak. She pressed her hands to her glowing marks, and for the first time, instead of hiding them, she whispered to herself, maybe I am not cursed. Maybe I am meant for something more. The footsteps drew closer, but this time they did not come with the same swift force. Instead, there was a strange quiet, a hesitation. A voice echoed down the tunnel, harsh and commanding. The princess lives. The city must know. Spread the word. Solari froze. Her heart pounded. If the city learned she was alive, it would not just be assassins hunting her. The entire ruling council, the lords who had taken power after her mother's death, would unleash armies. There would be nowhere safe. Daniel realized it too, but he did not look afraid. He looked determined. Then it's time we stop running, he said, glancing back at her. You're not a shadow anymore, Solari. You're the last of your line, and one day you'll take back what's yours. Her eyes widened. The thought of returning as a princess, of standing tall instead of crawling, seemed like a dream too big to believe. But Daniel's words planted a seed inside her heart. The glow on her skin flickered stronger for a moment, responding to the hope rising within her. The tunnel outside grew quieter. The assassins had pulled back for now, their orders clear, to let the world know the princess was alive. Daniel knelt beside Solari again, brushing dirt from her hair. You may be hunted, Solari, but you are not alone anymore. They can come with blades, with armies, with fear, but they will never take you without a fight. Not while I breathe. Her lips trembled. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his chest, tears wetting his shirt. No one ever stayed for me before, she whispered. Everyone left, even those who promised. Daniel wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. Then I'll be the first who doesn't leave. She closed her eyes, listening to the steady beat of his heart, stronger than the fear pounding in her own. For the first time in her life, she believed she was more than the cursed girl crawling for scraps. She believed she might truly be what he saw, a princess. Outside, the tunnels shifted with distant echoes of movement. Armies would come. Enemies would rise. But Solari and Daniel sat together in that broken chamber, bound now not by fear, but by a promise. And in the faint silver glow of her skin, a future began to shine. Word of Solari's survival spread like wildfire. The tunnels no longer felt like a hiding place, but like a cage closing in on them. Every whisper carried her name. Every shadow seemed to hold spies. Daniel led her out before dawn, moving carefully through the empty streets. The city was stirring, but already the news had reached ears too powerful. Loyalists in secret bowed their heads when they glimpsed her glowing skin, while enemies sharpened their blades. Solari clutched Daniel's hand tightly as they crossed the cracked stones. For so long, she had been invisible, crawling on the ground for scraps. Now eyes followed her everywhere, some filled with hatred, others with awe. It frightened her, but Daniel's steady presence gave her courage. He never let go of her hand, never let her feel small again. By midday, they reached the old square, once a place where her mother had spoken to the people. Now it was abandoned, the statues of the old queen broken, her image defaced. Solari's steps faltered at the sight. Memories of her mother's voice filled her mind, and tears stung her eyes. Daniel noticed and stopped beside her. One day, this place will be filled with your voice, he said quietly. and they will remember who you are." Before she could answer, the sound of marching boots echoed through the streets. From all sides, armored figures poured into the square. Not just guards this time, but soldiers, loyal to the lords who had stolen her mother's throne. Behind them came the assassins she had already faced, their crimson helmets gleaming. Solari's body froze. She whispered in fear, "There are too many. We cannot win." Daniel stepped forward, shielding her with his body. His voice carried loudly across the square. "If you want her, you'll have to cut me down first." The commander sneered, lifting his weapon. "Then so be it. Kill the human. Take the girl." The soldiers moved like a wave, weapons drawn. Daniel tightened his grip on his metal bar, standing unshaken as they advanced. Solari's heart pounded. She wanted to scream for him to run, but she knew he never would. He had chosen to stand with her, even if it meant death. The first soldier charged, but Daniel struck fast, his bar slamming into the man's chest and sending him sprawling. Another swung from behind, but Daniel twisted, knocking the blade aside. Still, there were too many. Blows rained down, cutting into his arm, grazing his side. Blood stained his clothes, but he fought on, his body moving with desperate strength. Solari's eyes filled with tears as she watched. The human was bleeding for her, protecting her as if her life was worth more than his own. Something inside her snapped. She could not hide anymore. She could not let him fight alone. Her hands began to glow. The silver lines across her skin flared brighter and brighter until her entire body pulsed with light. She stepped forward, her small voice rising, trembling but strong. "Enough!" The glow burst outward, filling the square with blinding brilliance. Soldiers shielded their eyes, stumbling back. The assassins hissed and staggered, their weapons falling from their hands. Daniel turned, staring at her in shock. Solari stood tall, no longer a starving child, but something greater. The light poured from her like fire, her hair whipping in the wind it created. The commander shouted in panic, "Kill her before she awakens fully." But no blade could reach her now. The energy around her lashed out like living flame, knocking soldiers off their feet, burning through their armor. The assassins tried to strike, but each step closer was met with a wave of force that hurled them back. Solari's voice rose again, stronger than before. "I was born of the queen. I carry her blood. You called me a curse, but I am not cursed. I am the heir." The soldiers faltered. Some dropped their weapons. The crowd that had gathered at the edges of the square began to whisper. A murmur spread like fire. "The princess lives. The princess has returned." Daniel, bloodied and staggering, stood beside her. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. His voice carried, rough but proud. "You see her now, not as a beggar, not as a curse, but as a princess. And she will not kneel to tyrants." The people around the square, poor and broken, began to step forward. They had once bowed to her mother. Now, seeing the light burning from Solari, they bowed again. One by one, voices rose, calling her name. "Solari! Solari!" The commander shouted for his soldiers to attack, but half of them hesitated, fear in their eyes. The assassins, furious, rushed forward one last time. Daniel, though wounded, raised his bar again, standing in front of Solari. But this time, he was not alone. Solari lifted her hand, and a wave of energy burst from her palm, sending the assassins crashing to the ground, their weapons shattered. The square fell silent. The enemies who survived scrambled to flee, dragging their wounded with them. Solari stood at the center, her glow fading but her presence unshaken. Daniel leaned on his weapon, bleeding but smiling faintly. She turned to him, her eyes wide with worry. "You're hurt." He nodded weakly. "I've been worse." Her hands trembled as she reached for him, her voice breaking. "Why would you do this for me? Why bleed for me?" Daniel looked into her glowing eyes, his own steady even through the pain. "Because you're not just a starving girl anymore. You're someone who can change everything. You're a princess, and you needed someone to remind you of that." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time they were not from fear. She helped him stand, and together they looked at the square. The people were still kneeling, still chanting her name. Solari, once mocked and crawling in the dirt, now stood tall with a human protector by her side. She turned to the crowd, her voice trembling but strong. "I was left to starve, treated as nothing. But today I stand because one man saw what you all forgot, that I am my mother's daughter, that I am your princess." The cheers rose louder, echoing through the city. Daniel looked at her with pride. knowing this was only the beginning. She had been hunted, broken, forgotten, but now she was rising. And he, the lone human who had refused to walk away, would fight at her side for as long as he lived. For Solari, the starving girl who once ate scraps like a dog, the world would never see her that way again. To them, she was a princess. And to Daniel, she always had been from the very first moment.